There is a point in every man's life when he discovers the truth that this life is hard. This time is trying. But then there comes a point when that man no longer asks, why is life so hard? But rather accepts the challenge and decides to step up to that challenge and make something of his life. Through this challenge, he finds his strength. He discovers who he was made to be. He finds God. This is as it should be. March through it. Come out a man. Find purpose in it.
Mm-hmm.
You wrote that.
I know.
Is that weird to have your own words written back to you?
It is a little bit, and it's really, really cool, actually. Yeah. I've got a full notebook just like that one of quotes like that. And I don't remember, I was trying to think, because you told me you like that one so much, like what inspired me to write that? Because usually I'll be reading someone else's work or going through something or listen to a song, and it'll inspire most of the things that I write down. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't remember what it was. I can't remember off the top of my head. But
do you timestamp them? Like, do you have the dates associated to? Yeah, on this page, that's just a screenshot of it.
Yeah.
I don't see any. I wonder if that would be helpful if you wrote the dates of which you're writing.
Yeah. Well, it is cool because I started that notebook probably in like 2017.
Oh, wow.
So I used to timestamp them, and it's cool to see what I was going through at that time and what things were important to me then, and how life is kind of morphed, because over time they all have a certain type of theme.
Yes.
And then in that time, it was kind of all about okay, life is hard, but like life is supposed to be hard.
Yep.
Yeah. And now that I have a son, I've been thinking about that too, because you want to raise him up to the point where like he doesn't have to go through all the hard things that you went through. Mm-hmm. But you keep coming back to the fact that that's not possible. Mm-hmm. And you wouldn't want that to be possible, because it's all of the hard stuff. And realizing that life is hard and overcoming it, that like actually makes you who you are.
Yeah.
And if life was easy, you wouldn't be where you are, who you are.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. So guys, this is why I had him on. No, I love it. This is great. That also, I'll do your actual intro here in just a moment, but for some reason, my mother sent me just the other day. I've also, like most people, journaled here and there throughout life. And she sent me a photo of something I journaled. I literally couldn't bring myself to read it. I still haven't read it. And it was just, she said what it was about. And I read the first couple sentences and I was like, I'm out. It was about my desire for romantic partnership, long-term partnership. Mm-hmm. And so it was writing about that. But I just saw what it was and I was like, cringe.
How old were you?
It was in my 20s, at some point in my 20s.
Okay.
Yeah. And so anyway, I still haven't read it, but she said, Claire, a lot of it still remains the same. Like the sentiments are still in alignment with you now, you know? Yeah. And so maybe eventually I'll go back and read it, but my own words in the past, sometimes I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
So this is really great that I create a podcast now so I can go back to it in this format.
And actually listen to it and watch yourself.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Even just going back and listening to my very first episode, which Yash was interviewing me, which he did a great job interviewing me, but even still perspective over just a little over 2 years now has shifted.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool to...
As it should be.
Totally.
And you don't have to be embarrassed about that.
Yeah.
The tattoo stuff we were talking about, that wasn't recorded, was it?
No.
But just like the tattoos, like you go through phases of your life and you're constantly becoming a new version of yourself.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah.
And we should give our younger versions of ourselves a little bit of grace.
A tremendous amount of grace. Yeah. And that for me, I'm really glad that I've been such a buffoon often, because it really helps me have a lot of compassion for people around me whenever I feel like that. I'm like, oh, well, we're all human.
Yes,
yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay. So my guest today is Layne Palm, which he is the owner of Fortify ATX. He's a doctor of chiropractic. Fortify is his chiropractic business, and he practices in ONNIT Gym in Austin, Texas, which is really cool. We both started working in that facility right around the same time. Yep. I like to blame myself for why he started working there, but he likes to say it was another member,
Nick Gomez. Shout
correct.
out Nick Gomez.
Yeah. Nick. Yeah. Whatever. Nick. No, I'm just kidding. We team effort, right? Yeah. We can agree it was a team effort.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Anyway, love you, Nick.
Yeah, just Nick gets a slight lead over you, barely.
Like 51%.
Yeah, barely.
Okay, cool. I accept. Also, you are the 96 kg United States of America weightlifting. I wrote USAW and then I'm like, oh gosh, now I have to say the acronym. USAW National Champion, which is
Yes.
Olympic weightlifting, which is a huge deal.
Yep. So that was last year. This year,
2023.
I didn't get to compete this year because we had a child.
You had a baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, big deal. So the 2023, thank you for that
Yes.
clarification. I was actually going to ask you because it's like, it's been longer than a year.
Yep.
And then you are the husband to the very first friend that I made when I moved here, Taylor.
Yep.
And then you are also now a dad.
Yeah. It's a lot of stuff.
You be doing something. Do you ever hear people like ever read back things to you and you're like,
Well, how
do you do all
I was
that?
thinking about it before this, and I thought maybe you would have me introduce myself and what things would I choose to say. And you encompassed them all, and I was thinking that I would include like follower of Christ in there as well.
we're going to talk about that. Don't worry.
Well, I was just thinking about like, what are those things that make me me? And I was like, doctor of chiropractic, father, husband, being a weightlifter, of course, is extremely important to me. And then follower of Christ. I was like, how can I leave that out? That's what shapes everything else and how I do everything else.
Totally.
So you crushed it.
Yeah. Yeah. Once we get into it, then it's like, weaving faith into your practice is something I think that you do really well.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about that. But before we go there, I love to intro with how we met. If we've got any sort of like cool
I know
how
exactly
we met.
what you're gonna
Oh, and
probably
ours
say.
is so good. And so it's so this is funny because a lot of people that will like, so for example, yesterday I went into ONNIT and it was a few hours after I had posted the episode that came out yesterday.
Yep.
And I went in and there were already 3 members in the building who had already listened to it. So I'd posted it a matter of hours
With Brad,
earlier.
correct?
Huh? Mm-hmm.
The Brad
Yeah,
one.
with Brad, who is also a member at ONNIT. And so it was so cool because they were like, hey, listen to it, whatever. And I'm like, it's so easy to produce, create something, put it on the internet, walk away from it and not realize that there are people in your real life. Maybe for me, that I'm like, you listen to that?
Yeah,
It was so funny. Ashley Roberts was one of them. And she was like, well, just listen to it. And I was like, you have to listen to the one with Meg because she does high rocks and you'll really enjoy that episode. She was like, Claire, listen to them. And I was like, oh, no way. So silly. So people know
amazing.
us in real life. But okay, so how we met, this is funny. So I just moved to Austin, Texas. I am figuring out where I'm going to be a member of a gym. I had just met and trained with Taylor. I knew she was married. I didn't know you were her husband. You came in later. You were in the back doing your own Olympic weightlifting stuff. And I was doing who knows what I was up to. I don't know Layne. I don't know Layne at all. I don't know that he is a highly skilled Olympic weightlifter, AKA literally last year's national champion. I don't have this context yet. Now, because he's doing what he's doing, I do have enough context to know that he's not a beginner. Like, even though you were just warming up, it was lightly loaded, the way in which you were doing it in the corner by yourself, I'm like, bro hangs out with a barbell. Cool. I'm facing you. And do you want to tell this part?
You just happened to be watching that rep, which I will say I've never done in my life, and I've never done again since that moment.
Yep.
Most of your listeners probably know what a snatch is, right?
I would think that most do, but I don't think that all.
Yeah. So this one of the Olympic lifts. Your grip is nice and wide, and you're going from the ground all the way up overhead, in one motion. And the bar just completely slipped out of my hands because it was a light warm-up weight still, and just flew over my head. And I got out of the way, thankfully, probably like a just scaredy cat. And you were just like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah. So I'm not even looking directly at you, but I'm looking in your line, like I'm looking your direction. Yeah. So I definitely see it occur and it flies out. And I want to say, you say lightly loaded. I mean, it's probably somewhere around 50 kg.
Yeah, it was probably 50
which for you is very
kg.
light. Yeah.
It was just warm-ups.
Right. And so the barbell, it's like you said, it's from the ground to overhead, caught in the bottom of a squat. It's a very rapid movement and it flies out of your hands. And so we've never spoken to one another. And I just go, you're okay. You're okay. Because I know what it's like to do something that scares you when you're training. And in the moment, you're just kind of shell shocked. Like, how did that happen? Am I actually okay? And thankfully the barbell went behind him. He stepped forward. He was fine.
Yeah.
But
I was like, oh my gosh, this girl probably thinks I'm like such a noob.
And then he goes on to tell me about a recent elbow injury he has just had.
Coming back from that elbow injury.
Yes. Yeah. So you already were like navigating through coming back from injury, which plays with your mind a bit. And totally. You flung the barbell above your head. Anyway, It's a funny story, in my opinion.
No, it is a funny way to meet.
Yes.
For sure.
And then you went on shortly thereafter to win nationals, so you're fine. Okay.
Redeemed myself.
To say the least, yeah. Then I realized you were actually our Ollie coach.
Yes.
So I was like, oh, sick, yeah. Okay.
And you didn't know I was married to Taylor at that point, I don't think.
No. Yeah. No, all I knew was, yet again, like I try to be very conscious of appropriate dynamics. And I've told you this before, you're such a close proximity talker that I remember you coming up and speaking to me after that and me like damn near leaning back because I'm like, I am not about to make anybody uncomfortable and I don't know you. But you're just a very like cozy person with other people.
Too. Yeah.
My mother is like that.
I think that's part of my profession, part of my gifts too, is like very like I like to make those connections with people and I like to be like lean in, like let you know that I care about this conversation and this interaction. Yeah. And then in the gym with loud music too, it always makes me have to get even closer to people. Yeah. I do that all the time with people.
I love it. My mom's going to watch this back and she will feel seen to say the least because she is so up in people and she's harmless, right? Like she is not. Too. Yeah. And, Okay, so I do want you to, before we head off in directions I want to go, I actually don't know that I have the best context for your upbringing, and so not that we need to spend like loads of time there, but I would like some context for it. So kind of take me back a bit.
Oh, and I'm going to say something that I just journaled about the other day. I'm reading the book by C.S. Lewis called Mere Christianity right now. It's really good. Have you ever read any C.S. Lewis?
I'm familiar with his name. I honestly don't know. We did just move my library up though. And
Fantastic.
I was like, I've read these books. This is cool. Anyway, no,
but
I don't.
His writing, it's the way it's written. It's very like deep and thoughtful. And obviously he's from like the UK, I think, or something like that too. So a little bit of different, and I think he died in the 60s. I could be wrong about that. Mm-hmm. But anyways, the way he writes really makes me sit and think. And one of the things I was thinking about was, we can be raised with like these religious values, and this I'm thinking about all this with Elijah as well, like where we take our kids to church, we instill all these good values in them and morals in them, and we teach them maybe how they should live, and hopefully like teach them to be friends and followers of Jesus. But all of that is just like teaching that is very important, and you're laying the foundation. But that's not a relationship with God. The relationship with God has to come through you saying, yeah, you taught me all that stuff. That's cool, but I think I can do it better. And you start walking a different direction. And until you figure out, oh my gosh, I've messed everything up. I actually can't do this on my own, which I know AA kind of teaches that similar perspective. Mm-hmm. You look around and you're like, man, what kind of mess did I make? I can't do this on my own. Mm-hmm. I'm not God. I don't want to be God. Right. And then you start walking back, or you take a different direction and you surrender to God. That's when the relationship actually starts to happen. Yeah. And that's when you can actually call yourself a Christian. And I think the reason I say that is because I'm very thankful for my parents, the way that they brought me in laying the foundation, taking me to church, helping me build a relationship with Jesus, instilling all of those moral values. But then, my parents got divorced when I was 15. And then I was like, I'm not doing any of that stuff you told me. Totally. Because it didn't work out for you guys. Like, why would I do any of that stuff? Yep. So then I went the opposite direction and started to rebel and started to party and all that stuff. Okay. So around age 15 is whenever that took place. Yep. And that's a radical change in your life. Totally. Yeah. Totally. Okay. But I mean, besides my upbringing with faith and stuff, I was very lucky to grow up on a dairy farm in the country, playing in the dirt, like driving dirt bikes and four-wheelers around and, milking cattle and all that fun stuff that kids should be able to do. Yeah. And I'm very thankful for that. It was a very small town upbringing, much different than Austin. And you got into wrestling relatively young too. Yep. I did that my whole childhood, all the way up into 1 year through college. And then I found CrossFit. Okay. Yep. By the way, Jimmy is about to start coaching a couple of wrestling classes locally, and I'm so excited for him because that's his roots too, and he loves it. I miss it for sure. I feel like at some point we'll have to figure out how to that'd be fun. Me and Jimmy wrestle. Well, for you, I mean, I don't know if you guys want to, but it's been a while. It could be interesting. It's been a while for him with his injury, so there's that. I could probably only take him now that he has one knee. He's definitely, and that other knee's coming back quick.
Taylor and I could take the class.
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
That would be great.
I definitely talked to him about like what it would be appropriate for me to do with that. Cause I, of course, don't want to get injured. So
totally.
Okay. So faith is a huge part of your life, your whole life. Around 15. I love the way that you like beautifully articulated that, because we have our own experiences with that walk away moment. If we were even brought up in some sort of spiritual foundation, you know, and if we weren't, then of course we got to go seeking too. But when we are straying, and even when we return, it can feel so, well, it is personal, but it can feel so unique, or like other people don't understand or something, right? Yeah. And then it's been a really cool thing for the past few years to come back around and realize like, this is just a really natural progression of a human. Yeah. This isn't like you were the worst or you were the best or anything. Yeah. You're just a human. Yeah. And it's very common in early stages of adulthood or, you know, adolescence to get some bright ideas and run off with your own self-reliance and eventually find yourself lost at wit's end. Yeah.
And it'll probably happen again. Right. For sure. Because we are imperfect, you know. It maybe won't happen to that extent again. But it'll probably happen again in some way or shape or form. Yeah. Where you have to continually come back and lay down. Right. Yeah. And be like, I did it again.
So what age were you whenever you decided to come back around?
Oh, I don't, that's tough. Probably like 18, 19. Okay. But even then, I feel like now being almost 30, I feel like I'm every year finding myself more and more in different ways, you know? So my faith at 18, or who I was at 18 is, and this is how it should be, is nowhere near the person I am today. Yeah. You know, so because I can remember my wrestling statistics as almost a way to kind of remember when I started to figure things out, because I was really good my freshman year and I came into sophomore year like ranked in the state, and then that's when everything happened, and I just had a terrible, because I was smoking, drinking, partying. I was just mad at the world. That was a terrible season in every way. And I remember my wrestling coach being like, what? Like, what did you do all summer? Like, what happened? Like, you're not the same person. And then I kind of at least got things back, at least my health. So I was taking things more seriously by my senior year. Yeah. And then into college, I feel like I was through the kind of those partying stages and had a little bit more maturity there.
Yeah. And you met Tay in college, right?
I was 20 and she was 18. Okay. Yeah. So undergrad. Yeah.
Okay. It is also so funny because you just said you're 30. Yeah. And I know this, I like speak of it all the time. And almost. I literally even just in posting yesterday, I was like, it's been so cool because you were some of the first friends I made. Yeah. You brought me to Red Rocks, which is, you know, something that's a big deal for me. Yeah. And as soon as I met you two, you were happily married and so on at an age younger than I am. And I just remember being like, okay, I'm going to pay attention to these two because they have something that I want. So obviously you're imperfect. I'm not expecting you to be perfect about it, but you guys are striving a direction that I find to be inspiring, and doing, like, as individuals, you're inspiring, and together you're inspiring. And
appreciate
that. Yeah, absolutely. And so, okay. So you guys meet in college.
Yeah, I was home for summer coaching CrossFit. And by then you're not classes.
Being a dodo bird.
No. No, but I was not also looking for any sort of relationship at that point. I still was, and Taylor will tell you, for probably the first 4 years of our relationship, not interested in marriage. Not that I was like interested in anything else, but I was just not, like, I thought like, this doesn't seem like anything that I think is very, like, we can be in love and we can be together, but we don't need to be married. Like, most people get divorced. My parents got divorced. Yep. What's the point? Yep. And I have obviously shifted my mindset on that drastically. Okay. Since then.
That actually, I appreciate you being willing to like share that. Yeah. And I think it makes a lot of sense.
I think a lot of people are there.
Totally. Like it only makes very logical sense to me that you would have some disinterest in a construct that you watched not come to fruition in the way that it was sold to you in your own household, which everyone is a human, and I'm not like throwing shade at it. Why did you come back around to deciding that marriage was something you did want?
Yeah. So, let me kind of start talking about why I felt like I had, I think, a distrust or a distaste for marriage. I think because I've thought about this with Elijah and how devastating it would be for him to like how he's watching us and raise him, and then for us to split up, and how like that's your world since you're a kid is your parents if they were together. So shaping your world and then having it destroyed was pretty shocking. And I think as a teenager too, you don't really know why, you're just like upset. But I will say, I think parents are really good at hiding all of their problems from their kids, which is probably, I know why they do it, and it's probably a good thing. But then to me, it made me think like, what? My parents were in love yesterday, and now they're telling me they're getting a divorce. Like what did you just? So then I was always afraid that like, hey, we could just wake up in 10 years and not love each other anymore. Because in my mind, that's kind of what happened.
Yeah.
And then as I matured and I learned more about myself and relationships, and what makes a successful relationship, I was like, no, they didn't wake up one morning and not love each other. That was 5-10 years of resentment and not going on dates and not communicating well. And like those seeds, they're planted and they're sown slowly. It doesn't just happen overnight. So my biggest fear of us waking up and not loving each other, that was taken away because I was like, no, that's actually not what happened. And as long as we are like sowing the seeds of a healthy relationship every day, which is like working on each other, communicating, continuing to like date. And if something's bothering us, we're not brushing it under the rug, right? We're talking about those things and addressing them as they come up. Then we're not going to wake up one day and just not love each other. Like it's going to happen slowly over time, and we have control over that.
Yeah.
So that I think helped me overcome that fear. And then also realizing like, oh my gosh, like I want Taylor to feel like she is my bride, you know, like I want her to feel like, and like I chose her and she gets to stand up in front of everyone we love. And then I choose her in front of everyone, right? And in front of God. And that's special. That I think is more special to the woman that you love than it is necessarily to the male. Because I've talked to a lot of guys who kind of feel the same way. They're like it doesn't really matter. Like we could just go to the courthouse and get married. And I think that that's fine. And I definitely, yeah, to each his own. But I think there is something really, really special for the woman and for the man after you do it, to be like, wow, we stood up in front of everyone and we chose each other.
Yep.
And in front of God, like we made these vows.
Yeah.
That's special.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting that you say that. It absolutely, and I agree. And thank you for like, truly, that was one of the things that made me decide I wanted to remain close to you too, was because of your prioritization of your relationship with one another, as well as your faith. And now I'm excited to watch that come to be with your kid, you know, like that's going to be so cool. So, as you're telling that though, it's interesting. It does make me think of, so my parents have been married for 44 years.
Amazing.
Right. Like shout out mom and dad. Thank you.
Shout out.
That's so cool.
Congratulations.
And it's so interesting because my father, you know, for a very long time has not been, a spiritual, he's atheist and he's open about that. And so it's interesting because because they have this marriage that spanned over the course of time, I have questions about it because it inspires me. I want it, you know? And so I ask, why did you stay? I know that when we were young, it was hard, you know, I mean, just like any, you know, they had their own flavor, but life's hard. You wrote about it, you know?
Totally.
So I ask them why, you know, and from my father, it's so interesting because he says, you know, you stood up in front of God and everybody and said, this is a commitment I've made.
Yep.
So it's a commitment that I've made.
Yeah.
And if I don't have my word, I don't have anything.
Right.
So I find it still to this day, that's what he says.
Yep.
And it's like the only mention of God. And I'm just like,
yep.
I love it.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful he chose to do it. And, so that's just what that makes me think of.
Yeah.
And
that makes me think of what our lead pastor, Doug, says all the time too, about like, I mean, people probably have varying opinions on this, but like he doesn't believe that like his wife is necessarily like his soulmate or the only woman that he could have married. But that being said, after you choose someone and you do that, you know, and you make those vows, like you cannot for a second let those thoughts into your mind that, hey, maybe you made the wrong decision, or maybe you'd be better off with someone else, or the grass is greener over there. You can't let those thoughts fester in your mind.
Totally.
Because then they slowly will grow, and then you'll be like, yeah, maybe I am more interested in especially when times get hard. Like maybe I was supposed to be with that person, or maybe things are better over there. but they're not.
I read a book recently, I Don't Want to Talk About It, by Terrence Real, and it's about men's overt and covert depression. It's a therapist, I'm sorry, I believe a psychologist, if I'm getting that correct, who wrote the book, and he's had his own struggles, and he works with men, and I just want to better understand how men deal with their emotions, because there are men in my life that I care about, right?
Yeah.
And it was a fascinating read because he uses a lot of basically case studies to tell his points, and in them there's this recurring theme of that grass is greener situation, where it's just, I'm so miserable for reasons I can't yet identify. Yeah. So clearly you must be the problem, or this relationship must be the problem, or something like that. And so of course those things shake out in those case studies differently based on actions that are taken. Right. But anyway, it was an interesting read. Mm-hmm. I'd be happy to let you borrow if you wanted to read it. But so I also then, like, one of the things I was going to ask you about that I have like later on in the notes, but we'll just come here now, is I have curiosity both about your relationship, your marriage, and about your faith, because I think that concepts are really cool, and we can listen to a lot of podcasts or read a lot of things that sound really neat and entertain us, and we like the ideas, and making them really tactical, practical is like the threshold that, like, if we can get some real tangible action, then like maybe we take it away, maybe we don't. And I don't believe that if we didn't, it wasn't for anything. I don't believe that. But anyway, so for you, demystifying the concept of, I make sure to water my marriage, I make sure to communicate with my wife, I make sure to, grow my faith, like both of those fronts, what are actions on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis that you are taking proactively to ensure that those things happen, as opposed to reactively once you feel like you haven't done enough?
Yeah. It's a great question. I think one of the biggest things is, and this I think helps every aspect of my life, is starting my day with intention. Yeah. And that's a pretty big theme throughout the Bible as well, and especially studying Jesus's life, like waking up early and starting the day with like reading and prayer. And I've talked to other young guys about this. Like, it's so easy to grab your phone in the morning. And if you grab your phone and start scrolling or answering messages right in the morning, that already is setting you up for a reactive tone of the day. Not to mention all of the things that the world is putting in front of your face every day as well. And I know I've told some people this before, but if Instagram puts things in front of my face, I'm going off a little bit here, that I don't want to see, and I'm not trying to make myself seem like I'm like holier than anyone else, I click on the image and I go in the right-hand corner and I say, I'm not interested in this, right? Or I block the account or whatever. Because then the algorithm starts to see like, oh, like Layne's not interested in naked women being all over his feed. And I think that is really important, because then what am I putting into my mind? And even if it's like there and I look at it every once in a while or something like that, that's starting to change my brain to say, like, oh, this is okay. Or, oh, maybe we should be interested in how these other women look, and opposed to how your wife looks, right? And so I'm very careful, and I'm not perfect by any means, and I will never claim to be. But I try very hard to not put things in my brain that are going to make me think thoughts that I don't want to be.
That don't
isn't going to serve me or help me. Yeah. And I think starting the morning that way, and obviously that's something you have to do throughout the whole day, is important. And obviously, like, I love, I'm so thankful for the place that we work. All right. But I think just like we live in Austin, Texas, right? There's even a theme at like CrossFit gyms with people like, sleeping with each other and stuff like that, right?
Communities make messes.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter what the community, they gonna make a mess.
Yeah, and I mean, to be completely fair, everyone's so nice and caring and in good shape and attractive. So like, if you're not careful over time, those things can start to be like, you can start to have feelings or to shape your thoughts in ways that maybe you weren't aware was happening if you're not careful.
Totally.
And especially now with like music and TV and everything is putting things into your head that aren't maybe your own. So then you could end up a couple of years later, be like, how did I get here? And it wasn't even anything you did on purpose. It was some sort of conditioning of other things that weren't actually your own thoughts.
Totally.
Yeah.
I thank you.
I don't know if I answered the question.
No, I think you did. I think that, if we were to get really, really, you did. And you even though I asked the question, you earlier stated communicate, do a number.
Yeah, I can expand on those as well.
Yeah, you already made some of those. I just wanted to get really into them.
Yeah.
But I like what you said about like making the I'm not interested in this thing.
Yeah.
Because maybe even the good trigger for it is I actually do find it interesting.
Yeah.
But I do not desire finding it interesting.
Bingo.
This is not a good
Exactly.
idea.
Yeah.
And so that's okay.
It's huge. Yeah.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. I'm trying to remember because there was something okay. So while you were talking about that with setting up your day in the morning with reading and prayer and not just going straight to Instagram and answering messages and so on, it made me think of, there's a piece of content that my friend Matt Vincent, he and his wife Bonnie are wonderful. They own a company called Not Dead Yet. Have you met them?
Yeah, I have. Just briefly when they've been on it, like shooting content and stuff like that. Yeah.
So they made a piece of content the other day, or he did, or whatever. It went like way viral. And I've had multiple of my clients who do not know that I know them at all send it to me, which is so cool. I love my clients send me things all the time and it keeps me aware of what they're thinking about.
Yeah.
And it's cool because that one resonated with so many of them, which is cool.
What was
the whole concept? And he articulated it in a very like brash and powerful way that made it so sticky.
Yeah.
And I'm going to butcher that. So I'm not even going to try. But the concept that he was conveying was floor versus ceiling. And so he was saying like, I'm clear on my floor.
Yeah.
I know what my floor is and I know what my ceiling is. And so my floor is, the base level stuff I'm going to get done. And the ceiling is I had a great day. I woke up, I did my gratitude, my meditation, my breath work, my ice bath, my whatever. I went on a date with my wife, blah. Right. And my ceiling or my floor is, what am I going to absolutely do whenever, if everything else. So when I think of the daily actions in the morning, and this is just mine today, and I'm hopeful to like expand upon it. I believe that that's how this works. So that's cool. But like floor for me right now is that I have all of these prayers that I have recited that set my mind in a positive direction. So they don't have to be my own independent thought, but I believe that they are good. And I will just fall straight to the floor onto my knees and there they go. And it's like a 15-second, maybe 30-second endeavor. There's my floor, and from there, maybe we build upon it and I have time for some other literature and whatever else. And that's great. And maybe that continues to grow, but like, I'm pretty clear on that floor and that floor has already done amazing work. And like, if you don't, the idea of not having time for 15 to 30 seconds. And I would love it for everyone if yours was so much greater than mine. That's just the truth about where mine is.
And those are your non-negotiables.
It's just so simple. We can get so complicated in these practices.
Yeah.
And when they become more elaborate, I suppose that's actually really cool.
Yeah.
But like, they don't have to be super elaborate to still be pretty effective.
Right.
So anyway, okay. Then as far as so you wake up in the morning and for you it's literature, prayer.
Yep. Maybe some journaling. I'm not like, I would like, that's something I'd like to be better on is actually like journaling about like my thoughts or like my day or something like that. I like the journaling I do is more like writing down quotes that I like, Bible verses that I like, or thoughts that I have. Sometimes if I have something like really great or not so great that happens in a day, I'll journal about that, like reflection journaling, but I'm not super great about that. So yeah, reading, prayer, and reading something that is going to set the tone for how I want to behave or think the next day. Yeah. So I don't read, it's all nonfiction in the morning. Maybe I'll read some fiction before bed or something like that. Just like to kind of downregulate instead of getting like my mind like racing or something like that. And then that kind of sets the tone for the day. Try to normally listen to like worship music on the way to the gym. So then I'm kind of posturing my heart, so to speak, and my mind as I'm going to work. So then I set the tone for when I walk into the gym, into work, which obviously all of these things are making me who I am, which is helping my marriage, right? So I'm not posturing my heart and my thoughts when I wake up in the morning and when I go to work, then that's obviously going to shape who I am and how I bring or what I bring to my family and to my marriage. And then on top of all of that, the communication with Taylor is, we've been together for 10 years, married for 3 or 4. And I think the biggest thing, we've had lots of ups and downs and lots of arguments and lots of hard times because we've been through a lot together, you know, undergrad, grad school, moving to Texas away from our families, you know, so doing this on our own, starting careers, getting married, having a kid.
Having a kid before you plan to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And honestly, it was a blessing that he came when he did. But yeah, we were not planning to. So that was a hurdle. And then all of the challenges that come along with that. And then when we have another kid and and a third kid, if we do, like those are just going to bring more and more challenges that we have to keep overcoming as they come up
Together.
Right. And then you kind of level up. Doesn't mean that like those old challenges you don't have to worry about anymore, but you've like already overcame them once. So you kind of have a better strategy to overcome them again in the future.
It sounds to me, and I don't know that there's really an answer for this, but it sounds to me like there's clarity and like conviction behind like, these are the priorities in my life. Like these are the things that they're going to take the vast majority of my energy. And that's my priority. You know, it sounds like you're very clear on those things. Would you say that clarity came through intentional work to arrive there, or just kind of over the course of time? Because I think about this too. Yeah. As things become more clear and less confusing, even for me, I'm like, was that just gonna have to take time no matter what? Yeah. You know, I don't know.
I think kind of. I mean, I have definitely become very intentional about it. But I remember when I was in college, I was the type of person who would like roll out of bed 15 minutes before class and grab coffee and, you know, throw on clothes and then be walking into class 5 minutes late. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's like who I was all through a lot of college. Yeah. So that wasn't starting my day with any sort of intention. But I think over time, hopefully you start to reflect and realize like maybe you're not behaving or acting the way that you would like to. And then you can kind of start to change those daily behaviors, whether or not it's like atomic habits, right? Where it's small things over time that lead to compounding big changes. Cause I wasn't always this way. For a while, I mean, it's been probably, 6 or 7 years now that I've loved reading, but I didn't always even like to read.
Okay.
I just like,
how'd you get into that?
I don't remember, honestly.
Really?
I really don't. I can't even remember. I just slowly over time. But yeah, I can't even remember. Was
it like a conscious choice? I'm going to incorporate this habit because I hear it's good to do, so I'm going to do it?
Maybe.
For me, it was very clear. Like it was the 75 hard challenges.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like 10 pages of nonfiction a day, non-negotiable. And I think I've done 75 hard like 4 times now.
But it is true when you start to do something that has a positive effect on your life. Like you do it long enough, you're like, man, I love the effect that this has on my life. Totally. And this is so important. And I need to make this a staple of every day. Yep. And then you start to love how it makes you feel. So you start to love the thing.
Well, and then I think on the flip side, especially relationally, like, I feel one of the things that has occurred is, I've gotten more clear on how few relationships you can truly prioritize and give very much time. I mean, it's such a, that asset is there's never enough. And so therefore then, like the more clarity I have about which ones of those are a priority and do my best to dump enough energy into them, then it's so much easier to then, with love, say no to others, totally. And that can be kind of like a weird thing to get in a groove with, I guess. Yeah. But that's another one where, Alex Hormozy says all sorts of interesting things that give me new ideas, right? And I love, he just articulated a story the other day on Chris Williamson's podcast, had him on for like the 3rd time. It's a great conversation. And one of the things he said was a guy, I guess, was pestering him for his time. And he pulled up his calendar and there was nothing on it. Yeah. And he said, "Do you see this?" And he was like, "This is," and I'm hoping I'm telling this correctly, but it was empty. And he said, "My calendar is empty. I don't have time." Like it's intentionally. And apparently he was with someone who was like, "No way you just did that to that guy." Yeah. And he's like, "It's intentionally this way. Right. Why would I change it if you know what I mean?" And so like valuing his own time so much so that whatever it is that is like blocked off for whatever it's blocked off for, valuing your own time. I don't know why that made me think of that, but
you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And owning my own business, I've definitely had to be very aware of that since we have the kid too. Yeah. Right. Like being a little bit more strict on the things that I say yes to or commit to. Yeah. Like that's the biggest thing that causes issues with me and Taylor.
I was going to say that's probably you like to say, yeah.
I say yes too much. I commit to too much, and then I wear myself too thin or give away too much of my energy. That oftentimes there's not enough left for Taylor.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's probably our biggest thing and biggest thing I'm working on.
Right. But you're working on it.
I am working on it.
And she's communicating to you when she feels as though that's happening. So
she
that's
is.
Cool.
Yes. She doesn't let that fester.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the biggest things that slowly tore apart my parents' relationship. Was we grew up on the farm. My dad took care of everything on the farm, and he worked his butt off. Like, you wake up at 4 a.m., you milk the cows. You milk the cows at 4 p.m., and then not to mention all the other things you have to do in the rest of the day and past that. And my mom's taking care of us kids. Mm-hmm. And they both did a great job. He was providing, she was taking care of us. But over time, whether or not my mom was resenting the fact that he wasn't home more, or maybe my dad was resenting the fact that she didn't help with any bills. I don't, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, that resentment, if not communicated,
yeah,
can fester, and it just grows and compounds just like positive habits do.
Yep. Yeah, I love the framing of, with resentments, being really aware of when they're coming up.
Yes.
And then understanding that when they happen, at least for me, most of the time, it's because my expectations and reality are out of alignment.
Yep.
So if you listen to this podcast, you've heard me say that before, but like, it's true. I think about it all the time.
Yep.
When I build up a resentment, or when I realize I've got a resentment towards literally anything, then it's really easy. And even, resentment towards self, because that's one we're really good at, then it's like, okay, where are my expectations out of alignment with reality?
Yep.
And what agency do I have over that? Obviously, if it's someone else's behavior, none.
Right.
So I'm going to have to get cool with that,
Right.
Right.
One of Jordan Peterson's 12 rules for life is be precise with your speech, which is like, and he expands on all the, I don't know if you ever read that book, 12 Rules for Life.
I have it right over here, and I want to say that I finally read it after you didn't stop talking about it.
Yeah. And sometimes he takes like this really long way, like travels a mile to go an inch type of thing to make a point, which it's kind of fun to read sometimes.
I love it.
Yeah, as you say, it kind of makes it a little bit more entertaining, and then he brings it back around and makes the point. But yeah, he basically, that rule, just saying, like, if you can be precise with what you're feeling and not beat around the bush or tell white lies or push things under the rug, you're going to avoid yourself a lot of problems in the future.
Yep.
Because then you're just going to address things because you're saying how you feel and being honest right up front.
Yep.
Before it becomes a bigger issue.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, that makes me think of another one of his rules that's probably becoming will become more real for you over the course of time, about do not let your children do anything that would make you dislike them.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I thought that was so good.
Yeah, I thought that was fascinating as well. And I can think of specific kids and situations, whether or not to my family or friends, where they have not, and I mean, this is going to come out. They haven't done a good
judge whenever it's not you, but
exactly.
Yes.
They have not done a good job of what he basically is saying in that point is, if you let your kids do things that make you dislike them, well, then they're probably not going to be accepted by society. Other adults aren't going to want to be around them, and other kids aren't going to want to play with them. And then over the course of their life, they're going to become social, I don't want to say rejects, but they're going to become not socially acceptable, which will lead them to being lonely and being anxious and all of those things you don't want to end up for your kid.
Well, and as you mentioned that, as much as you're like, hey, this isn't judgment, like you can think of specific individuals in your life where that has happened to their children.
Yes.
Like that's what, when I read that, I don't yet have children, and I actually carry a decent amount of fear because I have a desire to have children.
Yeah.
And the fear is, I hope that I do motherhood well.
Yeah.
I want to be a good present mother who enjoys being a mother and is engaged. I want to do those things. And I have fear that I'm pretty fucking selfish, And so like,
I don't know if you've read any of Taylor's posts.
Yeah. No, I love how she shares about it.
Yeah.
Yes. I've always loved that. I love that when she got pregnant, she just told the truth. Like, wait a second.
And she's hesitated posting all of those things because there are people out there who desperately want to be mothers and can't, and we've talked about those things, like, and we feel so terrible for those people, but you should still be honest and tell your story. because it is your story, and there's probably other people out there that feel the same way that could benefit from hearing your story. And she felt the same way. She was worried, like she wanted to keep competing in CrossFit and doing things that she wanted to do, and we didn't feel like she was ready, and she wasn't excited for a long time. And she didn't even feel, she had a pretty traumatic labor, but she didn't feel even like a super, super strong love connection for Elijah right away either. And that made her feel really guilty. But now it's the most amazing thing in the world.
Yeah, it's clear. We got to hang out last week, and it's so obvious. She's so into him, and it's
oh my
so
gosh.
cool.
Yeah.
And he's great.
It's amazing.
But I just, with all of that, like it does to round out that thought, it does make me think of situations where I know people who I like love dearly who have let that happen, and not from a judgmental place, because again, I have fear that I could do it, you know? But just knowing that hardship is set upon you. I like the way that he made that one of his 12 rules, and the way that he articulated it. If you haven't read that book, I think it's
very good.
So silly good, and we should all read it, in my opinion. So, okay. So I do want to talk now about your chiropractic practice. I have said that you're a chiropractor that behaves like a PT, like a physical therapist, and that the reason that I go to you and the reason that I send people to you is because I feel like you understand the quality of life that I intend to lead. You understand that I want to like strive and sometimes overshoot the mark. You know, and maybe that's going to put me in a funky spot or whatever, but ultimately like, you know, that I want to do things. And so anyway, why did you get into chiropractic?
Well, that's definitely, why I got in is, I guess, different than now, you know, how I practice and the way I view things. But I always was into coaching CrossFit, and there was a chiropractor at the CrossFit gym that I coached at. So I spent a lot of time with him, and that's what got me first interested in it.
Okay, that's cool.
And yeah, it was really cool. And I always wanted to be a chiropractor in a gym. So that finally came full circle, you know, and I love every day now. But when I first started in chiropractic, the way he practiced and the way that, you know, I thought maybe I would practice is a lot different than I do now. And just like anything, it morphs over time. But opposed to a PT, at the time, it was a lot harder for people to just walk in to see physical therapists as well. Like that's changed now where, you know, like PTs have direct access and you can walk in off the street to them. They still have some stricter regulations sometimes than chiropractors do in terms of like seeing them and just doing what you want with them or as you see fit. So that's kind of why I went the chiropractic route as well. And the whole idea of like adjusting and the subluxation theory. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but like
I've heard subluxation largely. I want to say because of you or maybe just through other chiros I've worked with in the past.
I need to be careful here how I talk, because just like anything else, the way people choose to practice, I would like to believe is because that's what they truly believe. And they would really, truly want to help people. The subluxation theory in a nutshell is like, and this is what chiropractic was kind of founded on, was certain segments of your spine would move out of alignment and compress the nerves, right? And that would basically be the root cause of whatever you were dealing with. So if we realign the spine, remove the subluxations in the spine, then that, and if you maintained that, could lead to the rest of your systems functioning properly, right? So, and not that I completely disagree with that at all, but I just decided I don't really want to be that type of chiropractor. I want to work on more the athletic population and like sports rehab stuff. So I moved kind of away from that idea of maintenance wellness care, and I moved into sports injury type of care. And I still see people who like have aches and pains from sitting at a desk all day. But my big like core philosophies are like, I really want, if someone comes in with pain, I want to educate them about why they're in pain, and I want to empower them to hopefully not need me for that long. And that's by, of course, we diagnose, we treat, and then we show you rehab exercises so that you can take care of yourself. And then if I have to see you, 4 or 5 times or something like that, then that's fine. But I don't want you to leave the office thinking that you need me in order to feel better.
Yeah. 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 And I
sense?
definitely totally. I mean, I have experience. My first experience with a chiropractor was years ago after a car accident. And I went for a number of months and it was snap, crackle, pop, goodbye. And
5-10 minutes most.
it just didn't, it was a temporary, it was a Band-Aid at best.
Yeah.
And it never seemed to improve the situation, which at that time was just some herniations in my cervical spine. And anyway, so then I chose to go to a different chiropractor that I knew worked with athletes where I lived in Oklahoma. And Dr. DeLong was his name, is his name. He's still there. Anyway, he did it differently. Yeah. And instead, it was a handful of months. It was now out of pocket instead. Yeah. And we got it done. Yeah. I stopped having, I mean, my range of motion at the neck had reached the point where if you're watching this on YouTube, like this was it, you know, there's all this other stuff going on that I didn't have access to, you know, for months. And so anyway, that was a really cool experience to be like, oh, you know, but he did some different things. Yep. So then I move here and I'm like, well, shoot, you know, and I didn't have anything going on acutely, but there have been 2 different times I think where I've jacked myself up for one reason or another and come see you a few times and like, what you said is true. You know, we seek finding a way to make the situation better as rapidly as possible. We do a handful of visits and we're good to go.
And most likely there's probably going to be things that you have to continue to do on your own. Yeah. Whether or not it's like addressing lifestyle factors or changing some things in your warm up or cool down or whatever it may be to keep feeling good. And we try to teach you those things. Yeah. So then you can continue doing those things on your own. Yes. And if you hurt yourself again, then I'm here for you.
Yeah. Then you keep my business thriving, and you do that because you don't like to do your homework. Yep. No, it's funny because one of the other cool things too is like I get to send my own clients to you. Yeah. And fun. I love doing that. It's so nice to have this like mirage of like, hey, listen, I'll like put you through a movement or whatever, and then you need to go see him and he'll like press on you.
And we're all in the same place.
Yeah. It's so convenient. But one of the things I love, I was telling my aunt this on the phone just a couple of days ago. I was like, what I love is you send me their homework too. Yeah. So that then I know exactly what you're prescribing for them. And we often just work it into their sessions.
Yeah. Into the warm ups or whatever.
Totally. Yeah. And then, that way they've checked it off. And anyway, for me, it's so cool too, because I already am attempting to do the best as I can just as their personal trainer with dealing with the injury at hand or the thing that we're working on. Right. And so then you send me those things. I'm like, you know, what are the things that I was already doing in some variation, you know, like what was going well? What did you add in? And it's a fun touch base for me to like improve my craft of just being a personal trainer.
Yeah. And you're smart. So you're already probably doing a variation of the things that we work on. Yeah. Anyways.
Sometimes. Yeah. Yeah. I would say sometimes. Yeah. I definitely am. But then I still do get to learn new things. There were like 2 that you gave to DM the other day that I was like, huh? Like, huh? So this, I mean, I've just literally never seen it. So that was cool. Like you're educating me through him. So thank you.
It's fun.
Okay. So why chiropractic now?
Well, and I've actually, since starting it on it, kind of had to, that's the biggest hurdle that I've had is people maybe will ask me about their injury or say like you or another coach, like gives them my number or they'll call me and they're like, hey, I don't think this is really like a problem for a chiropractor. Or like, oh, I don't really need my back cracked. Like, and then I have to explain to them like, yeah, like my doctorate is in chiropractic. I'm a doctor of chiropractic, but this is the reasons why, like, I'm different. And I'm very thankful for being a chiropractor because I do also really appreciate all of obviously it laid the foundation of everything I know in terms of anatomy and physiology and pathology and all that stuff, which you need. And then it also gave me a really great appreciation, which I think we all kind of share in the fitness industry of like, hey, the human body is capable of some pretty amazing things. So like it almost lies a little bit more with like Eastern medicine in the sense of like, hey, if we kind of nudge the body in this direction, it's probably going to be okay and it's going to figure these things out. Opposed to Western medicine, which, you know, I'll say like I have a team of really good like orthos and neuros, surgeons that I trust to send people to when I think that whatever's going on is beyond my scope. And I think that they need to see these people or get some imaging or whatever, or medications. But I think we have a more of a appreciation for like, hey, like we don't really need those things That's not the first line of defense. And most of the time we can get you better without those things,
Yep.
without interfering with those other things, whether it's surgically or medically. And the body can kind of get better on its own.
Yeah. Okay. So what is it that because I think the point that we're hearing here is if you are located anywhere in the Austin, Texas area and you need to work with somebody on some sort of physical pain, you might want to call Layne.
I would
strongly
love to
recommend.
work with you.
But from there then, okay, so what would you, if you could summarize, define what it is that you do at Fortify, what do you do?
Well, my core principles, I think, it would be restore strength and build resilience. Those are like the two things that I kind of have as my
tenets.
Tenets.
Yeah.
So if someone comes in and they're, I work with a lot of CrossFitters, a lot of lifters. I really enjoy that because that's also the world that I'm in. But it's not all lifters. There's
You've worked with a number of my clients and they're different.
Exactly. Everyday life stuff as well. But typically if you're coming in pain, right, we want to decrease the pain. So that's kind of the restore strength, restore that full capacity, and then build resilience, which is why I love that I'm in a gym now, because I feel like I could do that first part in the clinic I used to work in, getting people out of pain and restoring that strength. But then the building resilience piece is really where the gym comes in, and we can lift weights and load the tissues and get people stronger and build that body armor, right? So yes, we're doing a lot of soft tissue work. We do typical chiropractic adjustments if they're needed. And that kind of lays the groundwork and opens basically the pathways for us to really cement the changes. And that's when we go and load the tissue with exercises and lifting weights, and all those cool things that we get to do inside of ONNIT.
Yeah. And I love it because you're also then something you haven't even really touched on, but is a huge feature of your care that I've been told, I've experienced, but I've been told repeatedly by the people I do send to you. Yeah. They all feel like you're their best friend. Like they're all convinced that y'all are besties, which is great. Right. But it is because you truly care. It's not just,
I genuinely do.
Clearly genuinely care. Yeah. But you utilize the other feature of care there that is communication that is so often missed in that Western medicine. Yeah. Because it's just not built into the way that system is designed for that. There's not really space for it. Yeah. So it's not a shame on you practitioner as much as it's just it's just not there. And so then for you, I know not only are you working through things, but you're explaining what you're doing as well. Yeah. And then you're asking questions. Right. You do a good job of, and I would imagine, do you ever talk to your patients about other lifestyle factors such as diet or anything?
Literally everything. Okay. And that's one thing I love about the way I practice too, is I get lots of time with people. So at the minimum, our visits are 30 minutes at a minimum. Yep. And that's a lot of one-on-one time. Above that, I have 60 to 90 minute visits as well. Yeah. So that's a lot of time for us to get to know each other and for us to communicate. And then you can uncover a lot about a person just through conversation. And I really do enjoy building all those relationships because I do think a lot of other practices they might not even have the capability to spend that much time. Maybe it's because of the way that their insurance billing is set up or something like that. They could have multiple people scheduled on the same, 15-minute block or something like that. So then you could spend 5 minutes with your medical doctor. And then you're like, wait a second, I didn't even get to say half the things. Or you leave and you're like, oh man, there's 10 other things I forgot to mention. But then when we get to spend 30, 60, 90 minutes together, all of those things usually come up, or they do at the next visit. And then they feel comfortable enough to tell me a lot of things like that too. Yep. So then we can have the relationship where I'm like, hey, you really need to get to bed sooner. You really need to put that phone down a little bit earlier. Or if you don't change these things, this isn't probably going to get better. Yep. And sometimes they still don't change those behaviors, but that's just how humans work.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's just that's such a key piece of your practice that's you know what I mean? Yeah. You do all these other things, but really understanding the human on a human level.
Absolutely.
On a psychology level
totally
is so important.
And I like to think, that I'm a smart person, but there are people who are much maybe smarter book-wise than me. But I do think that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Totally. And to be completely honest, if someone knows that you care about them, and like I said, the body really kind of wants to be at homeostasis and it wants to feel good. If we can nudge it in the right direction and make some changes and instill a little bit of hope in someone, most things are going to get better. Most things are going to improve. And honestly,
which is so exciting for someone who has been in quote unquote chronic pain. Maybe I shouldn't put that in quotes, but for someone who has been in chronic pain, or someone who
chronic pain's tough. Yeah.
Or just, I mean, in any sort of situation where they feel defeated,
hopeless. Yeah.
When they can work with someone who's like, you're not hopeless.
Yeah.
I mean, the reprieve mentally that they can get, emotionally that they can get. It's very impactful.
And to be fair, I'm working with a lot of people who are pretty remotely healthy and care about those things, which is great, because I used to work with a lot of people when I worked in like an insurance-based clinic setting that did not care about those things so much. So they weren't sleeping well. They were eating like crap. They're not drinking any water. They sit at a desk all day. They hate their job, hate their spouse, you name it. That's really where chronic pain becomes extremely hard to fix, because you're having these same conversations and they feel overwhelmed, like they can't do anything to get out of whatever situation they're in.
Yeah.
So those type of people are extremely draining. I feel like the first 4-5 years of me being in practice, like
that was a lot of it.
I feel like it aged me so much, because it was just, I'm so empathetic. I was just taking everyone's problems.
Do you feel like you were able to move the needle with those individuals?
Sometimes. And it's hard to know, right? The ripple effects that you could cause in someone's life.
Yeah.
I've definitely written about that too. Like if you do the best you can and you're kind and you're loving and caring to that person who's in front of you in that moment, in that interaction, maybe they don't make the change then, but that maybe you planted a seed that will eventually grow and the ripple will eventually cause change. So that's kind of the hope that I would hold out on for. But I would have people come back every week telling me the same exact things and me telling them the same exact things, and they'd not make any change.
Right. So then you just feel like you're like throwing your head through the wall.
Banging your head against the wall. Yes. Because I care so much, and I've cared more than they did.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now being here, working with athletes, people who care, that are paying cash to see me. And it's not necessarily cheap. I know a lot of people at ONNIT do well, but it's not necessarily cheap. So these people are invested, right? I'm invested in them. They're invested in me. They want to get better. Anything I tell them, they value, and they're probably going to try their best to incorporate into their lives, so they get better a lot faster.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a moment to evaluate too. There's this distinction of these characters that, one of them is largely, like almost like, I mean, this is going to be kind of offensive, but it's not untrue in my opinion, this victim of circumstance, right? There are all these factors going on in my life that are causing my life to be so hard. And, my everything outside of me is the problem. It's my job. It's my spouse. It's my whatever, versus this other character that you're referring to that has taken some agency, and maybe they started in one area of life and then they realized they could take some in another area of life, and it just blossoms in this beautiful way. But, character A that I just referred to, Mr. Victim, you're not stuck there. That person, if that, like it's not an indefinite thing. So I don't know. 'Cause I do just like, you're right. You don't know the seeds that you plant and when they will sprout and grow, but and not that we know what's right for, but I agree with you. You take on their pain. It's like, my gosh, I just wish for you so desperately that you wouldn't have to suffer at the hand of your own actions.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely.
It's tough.
It's very tough.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I do feel like I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, and the gifts that God gave me are to do this type of work.
Yeah.
But I would be lying if there wasn't days, especially before, where I was like, man, it'd be so much easier just to do a job where like I didn't have to be this emotionally invested in other people.
Oh my gosh. I don't even know what setting they would put you in that you would stop being emotionally invested. I think it's just in your being.
I think it is too.
You would need to literally not work with other people.
But if you look at pictures of me when I got out of grad school opposed to now, me and Taylor will joke about it. And I also started weightlifting then, so I think that might have a piece of it as well.
Yeah.
But man, I'm like, I looked like such a baby, and now I look like a grown adult. Like I couldn't even grow facial hair then.
Bro, you're 30.
And I know, and I'm 30, but I'm just like, man. So
Yeah.
now I think I'm in a place that's filling my cup more than draining it, which
Yeah.
I think was important because there's only so much to give, so I think I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to. And I'm still giving a lot of myself to other people, but also in a situation that also fills my cup.
Well, and it's worth mentioning too, you refer to those first handful of years where it was more cup draining than filling. And like you utilize that as motivation to find a solution to your problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was like, hey, I still enjoy doing this type of work
Yep.
with people,
Yep.
but this specific setting maybe, or, client demographic or
Yep.
whatever, I'm finding this. Okay, listen, we just had a pee break and I need you guys to know that there was a little booger in my nose that I think that Layne saw the whole time and totally didn't tell me.
I did notice it the whole time,
But it was on the right nostril, so I don't think you guys saw it.
It would not have been in the camera.
Listen,
It would have been worse for me to bring it up.
I thought we were friends. Okay.
It would have been worse for me to bring it up.
I saw it. I was like, well, I don't think anybody else
on
sees.
this side.
Yep.
So you never would have noticed.
It happens. Okay. Anyway, so back to where we were.
So tiny.
It was a little time, but I went in there and I was like, well, it won't be noticeable, but I know Layne saw it. Okay. So the let's see here. And now that I told you that I remember exactly where we were and I derailed us, it was just the cup filling. You didn't let all of that experience of those first 5 years of it being really hard go for nothing. You let it inform you to make a decision to say, I still want to do this type of work, but I've got to change setting. I've got to change, whatever.
Which is a good life lesson too for like
anything.
Yeah. And I think a lot of our generation too is like not willing to put in like a serious amount of effort. Like I wouldn't have been ready to start
You're good.
at ONNIT or start my own practice rather right out of school. Like I wouldn't have been ready to do that, or if I would have, it probably wouldn't have been successful. Yeah. So I'm very thankful for, the years that I spent working for someone and going through all of that. Because it really did shape me and set me up, and it did open up the opportunities to be where I'm at now.
Yeah.
And in 5 years from now, like who knows what we'll all be doing 5 years from now. But all we can do is just continue to work really, really hard.
Dude, I can't wait.
Yeah, and just continue to get better at our craft, to get wiser. That's one thing I think why I love starting to read as well, is because I could very tangibly see that when I spend my time reading opposed to scrolling Instagram, like it has a compounding effect that's making me better and better ever, and wiser and wiser. Mm-hmm. So like, oh man, like, and I'm not like my mind thinks of like Ben Patrick, because I know that he like doesn't watch, like I think he said in a interview with Rogan, the knees over toes guy, Ben Patrick, right?
Yes.
That he like didn't watch TV or use like his phone or anything like that for anything besides like learning or business for like over a year or something like that, which made me think I wasn't doing enough. But it was also like wow, okay, so you need to have balance, but like, man, if you're not working on becoming like fostering those like good behaviors of learning and reading instead of being on your phone first thing in the morning, like it's going to slowly make you, I don't want to say dumber, but it's not going to be making you wiser over the years.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I have one more thought before we leave some of the other stuff, but because you said that, then I just want to know real quick, who are some people that you currently look to for? So Ben Patrick gave you an idea that inspired you to maybe do a little less of this and do a little more of this.
Sure.
Who are some individuals that stand out to you that you're like, man, they have fed me?
Well, the first person I think of, do you know who Bob Goff is?
Dude, being you have to say Jesus. What are you talking about?
Well, of course.
Okay, anyway, no, I don't know who
but
Bob
I
Goff
promise
is.
you, Jesus is he's going to be a staple and he's going to shine through all the people that I would mention for sure.
Okay.
Do you know who Bob Goff is or
I
no?
don't think
He's
so.
an author, but he's an older gentleman. He's one of my favorite authors.
Okay.
I'll have to share one of his books with you.
Yeah.
But he's just like if you think about like the older gentleman who's just really wise and he's really like happy, and you can tell that like through his life and through his like walk in his faith, like he's become wiser, which makes you like more and more at peace. Mm-hmm. Like you can see an older person who has done that and they're happy and they're at peace or someone who has not done that and they're towards the end of their life and they're bitter and angry and scared of death. Right. So like I look to him because he's like the perfect example of like what I want to be and how I want to treat people, and how I want people to look to me when I'm older. I really look forward to those kind of sage years of my life.
Yeah.
So he would definitely be one of them. I know you mentioned Trey Steele. He was on your podcast and he started the whole project.
Yes.
He's definitely one of the mentors in my life at the moment.
And that episode would be in the 20s or 30s. We're in the 80s now. And so just if you go, you're going to have to scroll back a ways, but you can go listen to that episode with Trey Steele.
And just the way that he handles adversity and trials and how strong his faith is, and the way that he mentors me, like I definitely look up to him.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
totally. Those two for sure. I've definitely, obviously there's many, many more positive influences on my life that I'm very, very thankful for. But I think it is really important to always have, I don't remember where I got this, but like someone in your life that you interact with quite frequently that you want to emulate or you want to be like, or that inspires you, and that's like done it and walked through it. But then also have someone in your life that looks up to you and holds you accountable to a standard that you want to hold, and that you can inspire, right? And almost like you are going to be that person that you look up to them. I don't remember where I learned that, but like you should always have those two categories in your life, and you shouldn't be just the person that like you feel like everyone's looking up to.
Right. Ego.
Exactly. Ego is the enemy for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's because you don't want to start to think that you have it all figured out. We know those people who act like they have it all figured out, and that's nothing but, and that's like the pathway we walked down, what we were talking about, where you think that you can do it all on your own.
Gosh. Yeah. Self-reliance is so insidious. It was, at the time that I got sober, I had gotten to the point of misery to get me there through loads of self-reliance. So then I took some humble pie and some new actions, and then my ego flared again, and I got self-reliant again. And who knows how this will go over the course of time. But, in the last couple of years, it's been such a beautiful coming back down from that of like trying to implement both of what you just said through some things that I'm involved in, where I both get to have someone that I look up to and then also get to mentor, and so thankfully through coaching and work, that's an option. Right. But then anyway, that's cool because there are different systems. Wherever you got taught that is probably different than where I got taught it, but like I would strongly agree with it. Yeah.
I would also like to shout out Brad, who you just had on the podcast.
Yeah.
Because I've went up to him in the gym and told him that I very much appreciated the way that he carries himself and the way that he talks to and treats other people in the gym. Because he also is a person who has a lot, has an influence, has a platform. He doesn't necessarily need people to like him or to treat people well, right? And I'm sure there's people who want him to like, because of his status, to like them. But he treats everyone with a lot of respect, and he's always saying hi to people. He's always nice to people. Always make sure to like say hi to me and ask how my kid's doing, like going out of his way to make you feel seen. I told him that I really appreciated that, and that was something that inspired me.
Yeah. And that action that you're referring to, you just chose to spend some of your airtime on him because of such a simple action that he took. So I would strongly agree. I had the opportunity to meet him about 2 years ago. So I've known him for a little while, from a distance, and I've seen that the whole time. And so now we get to see it close proximity in high frequency, and it is consistent, but it's been that way ever since I met him from what I've seen. And if you are listening and you haven't listened to that episode, that is episode 83 with Brad Womack. So that's only 2 or 3 episodes back from this one. So, excellent episode. It's Fitness Over 50. He's 51. He was the Bachelor twice. Like he's got just an interesting story and just a good dude. I love that you told him, and that like the action that makes you want to mention him is as simple as being nice and interested in other people. Like there is nothing complex about that. And it's a lot of why I have you here. So you're doing a great job of it as well.
I feel little nudges all the time to go up and tell people certain things like that.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. And I kind of feel like it's God, because I also feel like sometimes when you go up and tell someone that, or something specifically, we never know what's going on in people's lives.
Yeah.
Right. Or what they're going through or what they're thinking. And then someone comes up and tells you something, and that could be God winking at them or God talking to them through you. So like, I always think that we should follow those little, like, is God trying to tell me to say this or to do this?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like kind of scary. Like I've prayed with patients before. I've gone up and told people stuff like that before. And you don't make it weird, but like if you feel that little urge, you don't know what God's trying to do through you.
Yeah.
In that person's life.
Yeah.
So that's another thing I always try to tell myself too, is just to, like, if I can be a vessel for God to work through, then I will feel like that day or my life is a success.
And you have to be present to do that. If you're not aware of what's around you, you will miss those opportunities. Yeah. And if you are aware of it, right. Man, that's really
God
cool.
can't talk to you if you're always distracting yourself.
Yeah.
One of my favorite books I've read recently is The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer, that they talked about a lot at Red Rocks.
Yes.
But basically the whole premise of that book is like the way that like the devil is trying to basically pull you away from God now and drag you down is by distracting you, making you so busy that you can't hear what God's trying to tell you, or you can't see that God's telling you that you're loved and you're beautiful, because you're so distracted by what the world is telling you.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. The concept of time in solitude, which at that time it was not solitude.
It's hard.
It was hard. And it's not always solitude today, but the time in silence. I remember my therapist a few years ago when I finally started working with one of those, and she's awesome. And then of course mentors in my, recovery, and anyway, saying I needed to spend time with my own brain. And I was like, that sounds
scary.
So bad. Like I have not done that. Like the podcast comes in the shower. Yes. Okay. We don't do that. And then, but starting to do it, of course, now I do try to block out time for just like, you're not consuming. And it's so hard because you naturally want to gravitate to consume. You walked in and I had a podcast playing. Like I very much do set out sections of time to be with self, but also it's easy to want to get,
your brain wants to fill the space.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, and thank you. You've referenced a number of different things that I'm interested in, like reading. So I appreciate that. So this is going back a little bit to the whole like workout type stuff, because you also literally are a very high level athlete. You work with high level athletes. And this is something that I'm totally just selfishly pulling my own experience, but I also do think that in some form or fashion, this is going to be relatable for most people who are doing fitness in any way. So like, even if your early stage is beginner, or all the way up to, some high level something. So you already know the story. On Monday, and I'm not going to get into the weeds of it because I'm literally not encouraging anyone else to go do the workout. So we're not going to talk about what it was. I chose to do something that I saw and I was like, oh, that looks hard. And then I chose a harder version than I think was even recommended.
Because you're crazy.
Because I'm crazy. Occasionally I like to do things that I feel like, okay, I'm going to feel like so I knew whenever I went into this, and by now, my training journey, like I'm really far in, like I'm literally a coach. And here's what's funny is this specific thing, I would never encourage a client to do it. Never. Like there's not a single client, including ones that do incredible things, I'd be like, yeah, that's a good idea. So it's funny the things we will do with ourselves. Anyway. Okay. So Monday I go do this thing, and I am, I thought I might have injured myself. Thankfully, I think I'm fine, but I like got scared during it, and then I'm paying for it. And even when I made the choice to do it, I was like, I'm sacrificing the first half of this week in training because I'm going to choose to do this, but I want to do a hard thing. Yep. Anyway, so Jimmy and I spoke about it afterwards because he's also very smart and very high level. And his 2 cents to me was, there's a time in which something like that made sense for you in your journey of fitness because your strength wasn't what it is now. Your skill level was not what it is now. And at this time, this type of behavior doesn't really make sense for you. The risk is too high for what reward. So just take those things into consideration next time you want to go do something like that. And I love that because I think that we as people who want to strive to achieve great things, that's a beautiful thing to do. And I don't know that I would even necessarily consider this a great thing as much as I just chose to want to strive on a day. When you hear that as a practitioner and an athlete, what are your thoughts?
Well, I have that conversation all the time with patients, because a lot of people come to me specifically because they know that, like, hey, you also do this sport, or you also are competing in a sport. So you understand, them talking to me, that I'm not going to stop doing this, even though maybe this isn't good for me, right? Like, me competing at a high level in weightlifting is not necessarily putting more years onto my life, and I'm aware of that. Or competing, trying to go to the CrossFit games, like, for example, like some of my patients are trying to do, like, that's not healthy. That level of training and that level of beating on your body, I would not categorize as healthy.
Is it the fitness wellness continuum type
Exactly.
thing?
Yeah.
And once
broken,
we get so far over here,
I would say that has broken the scale. Yes, because, like, the fitness wellness continuum, I do love, like, the way that CrossFit talks about that, right? And, like, the fitter that you can be, like, say that, for example, you get COVID, or you're in a car accident. Like, if you're sitting over here on fitness, that might just knock you down to here. But if you're just keeping your head above water, or you're, like, not very healthy or strong, something like that can knock you way down into sickness being over here.
Yeah.
But you can also, like, this point, like, I feel like people have gone past a healthy level of fitness and now are working back almost to sickness in the other way.
Totally.
So then you're
You
overtrained.
could think about that even with bodybuilding, which yet again, I find actually really inspiring. Yet, most people participating in a high level would say, like, we've passed, this is not health, you know?
Right. And I think most athletes, if they're not aware of that, I make them aware of that, right? I say, like, hey, just so you know, like, this, what you're doing is what's hurting you, but I'm not going to tell you to stop doing it, because I also understand when you have goals and you're working towards them, there's a trade-off there. Anyone in any sort of the high level of any sport is given a trade-off, whether or not it's health or whether or not it's relationally or whatever. There's a trade-off. There's almost only so much that you can give that your body can handle. So I tell them that, but they've also came to me because they say, hey, you're going to get this and you're not going to tell me to stop. Because I'm never going to tell someone, if they're like, hey, my goal is to do this, to make it to the CrossFit Games or go to the Olympics, I'm not going to say, well, I don't think that you should do that. Or like you need to stop doing that, or this is going to happen. Because I've heard it a million times. I've heard it thousands of times where people come in and they're like, hey, my doctor told me that I can't do X anymore. Or if I continue doing X, I'm going to need this surgery or something like that, right? And I don't think that's true. I think a lot of medical doctors, I think, drastically underestimate what the human body is capable of doing. But that's something that I think has made me and my practice very successful. Is when people come there, they know that I'm going to help them with whatever they want to get to. I'll tell them the truth, but I'm going to help them, and I'm never going to tell them to stop. I think of when I went to the ER for dislocating my elbow snatching, and they obviously mean well, but like all the doctors were like,
stop.
Don't ever try to put that much weight over your head again. Okay. Like, and in the back of my head, I'm just like, yeah, as soon as possible, I'm going to try it again. So they just don't quite understand. If you've never competed or you've never wanted to push yourself like that, doing a marathon, doing an Ironman, those things aren't good for you.
Right.
The workout you did on Monday, probably, there's a point where, like, the reward, like, you've passed the chance of this being good for you, and now you're just doing damage.
Straight up. I literally,
okay.
we're gonna press, we're gonna stop this, and then I'm gonna ask you, like, hey, am I okay? Like, here's what this sensation feels like. Am I okay? And I think, like, ultimately the body is beautifully resilient, and it is actually fine, but it was a good reminder too. It is just so funny, because for me, being in the personal trainer / coaching, doing the online coaching, the mindset, the nutrition, doing it, all of those things that I get the opportunity to do, working with individuals who just want a high quality of life. It's so interesting, because I mean, I just had one client run over 200 miles in the month of July, right? Which is like so cool, you know?
Very, very cool.
And like, but it definitely,
And
you know, then it's like, okay, huge accomplishment.
Yeah.
It was so cool. And then, so you never want to encourage somebody to not do. And yet then also, I don't know, I just try to always have conversations about like, are we striving for health and longevity?
Yeah.
And if health and longevity is our goal, then like if that's our true north, then like these are the behaviors that we're doing.
Exactly.
And it's funny because as I say that, right. And so then as I say that, it's like if health and longevity is my true north, then the action on Monday was dumb silly. And I know it.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay.
But I would like to say on that last point too, if someone's goals are to do an Ironman or go to the Olympics or something like that in whatever the sport is.
Yep.
There are things that you can do to mitigate your risk for injury and try to. So if I'm loading my back a bunch with my lifting, there's things you can do before you leave the gym or every night before you go to bed that can try to undo or mitigate the chance from you making that worse or turning it into a long-term problem.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, whenever you're pushing your body to the test, there's going to be risk for injury. Mm-hmm. But there's things that we can do to try to make you more resilient.
Yes.
Like one of my models.
I feel that like the biggest injury is non-use.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Oh,
like
agreed, right?
Yeah.
Sitting and working all day or not pushing your body is just as bad for your health.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, then you talk about mitigating the, damage risk. Control.
Yeah.
And I think Matt Choi, the local runner here, I think he's like such a prime example for that of all of the care. Now, of course, he that's what he does at this point, and but he had to build to get there, and it wasn't always just sunshine and rainbows and easy. I'm sure it's not sunshine and rainbows now, but I mean, even having the means to be able to afford to do the body care and so on, like he's had to work his butt off to get there, and so just tremendous. Like kudos to him, but he's another example of like these people who strive to do these things. And I'm referring to him because he just did the Leadville and he's done so many things. And did you know that he did that?
No.
Oh, he literally ran the Leadville in sub 25. That means that his pace per mile for 100 miles straight was 14 something.
That's crazy.
Minutes per mile.
Yeah, that's wild.
For 100 continuous miles.
I
can't even make that make sense. And it was the Leadville in Colorado with all the elevation.
Right.
I'm not
and
well.
Right.
And he's out running. Like he's fine. It was a couple weeks ago. He's like fine.
Yeah. That's
anyway,
amazing.
But the body is amazing.
Truly.
And he has done so much to prepare and so much to mitigate that damage that he's still performing at such a high level. So yet again, I'm speaking from enough of a distance that if he were to sit here, he'd give you a bit more context for that. But I'm so grateful that there are people who do those things because they convince me that some of my things are actually fine.
Totally. Totally.
Whenever I want to get scared. And I think that's the other thing too, is like, it could be really easy to then go catastrophize whenever you feel like you may have done something that could have hurt you and to seek answers on Google or to think of all the possible outcomes. And I personally am like, no, you're not doing that.
It's a rabbit hole. And I mean, like 80% of things are probably going to be fine after a week or so. You know what I mean? That's what I tell people too, if that stop me in the gym and they're like, hey, like this just happened. This hurts. Like, what should I do? Maybe I'll give them a couple things to work on. But I'm like, hey, like if it's still hurting you in like a week, then we can talk about you coming in. But like give this like a week and you'll probably be fine.
Yeah.
And that happens all the time.
Yeah. Okay. I promise I'm almost done.
Okay.
This one just came up for me because you are a chiropractor.
Yes.
Posture is like a huge thing for people.
Right.
So it's one of the biggest complaints whenever I get a new client, something they want to improve is their posture. It makes sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
What would you say are for a listener who wants to improve their posture? Mm-hmm. What are like 5 actions that they could incorporate into their week that would help improve their posture?
And posture is kind of a big buzzword lately, for sure.
Yep.
And I think, and then you have people on because Instagram and social media is always trying to like be super hot takes, right? So now everyone's like, oh, posture, like your posture is not actually a big deal. And like to a degree, like the body's meant to move through all of these ranges of motion. So like being in this position, what you would typically think of as poor posture, isn't in and of itself a bad thing, right? But being in this position for prolonged periods of time and not moving, right? Or getting stiff in this position because you work at a desk or look at your phone for hours, that is when it becomes a problem. So I think for people, the biggest thing that you can do is try to just get more frequency of like movement and changes of position throughout your day. And that's a very easy, simple thing to do.
Yes.
Like you don't even need to be sitting with perfect posture, right? With your shoulders back, head upright, right? For the whole entire day. It's okay if you slouch a little bit throughout the day.
Yeah.
You just need to try to move more. That would be like the easiest one, is move more.
Yep.
So standing desk can be great for that too, because it can get you, your hips opened up, can get you standing. But then you can also still slouch over your desk when you're standing as well. So that doesn't necessarily fix that problem. But I'd say if we can try to move more and then take your joints through their full ranges of motion every single day. So whether or not that's you like doing some cat-cows or some standing like gunslinger things, or like your cars where we're trying to move our joints through their full ranges of motion, that's going to keep them from stiffening up, keep kind of promoting blood flow to those end ranges of all the joint capsules and stuff like that. That should keep things from stiffening up. And then of course using tools like a foam roller, for example, you can do a lot of good too if your tissues are getting stiff, or a lacrosse ball, using one of those things for some self-myofascial release to promote some blood flow to those tissues and decrease the tone in them. I like to tell people, just like brushing your teeth, use the foam roller or lacrosse ball daily just for tissue maintenance and tissue health. Using it once, you can make like a short-term change. Like if I have someone test their thoracic extension and then foam roll for like a minute or two on their T-spine.
Yeah, they're going to get more range.
Yeah, you can make a pretty immediate change that can help you with whatever activity you're about to do, if that's like lifting or something like that.
Yeah.
But then that's just going to go back to what it was before. But if you do it daily and you have those movement practices and rehab exercises that you do as staples every day, just like brushing your teeth or something like that, then you can make more long-term change, or and consistently mitigate those stressors of the daily life.
Yeah. Those are so good. And I love it. You know, it just like, mobility is another hot topic, buzzword, whatever. Anyway, it's just, that was so simple of like, hey, cause then simple. Yet again, it's like, oh my gosh, I think if I'm the person that's receiving this information, that I do want to improve my posture, I would like to be able to get out of my position here and get into this position. Then when I hear daily, I'm already overwhelmed. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God, another thing I got to do. So then it's like, actually, this, during while you're watching your TV show at night, or while before you get in the shower in the morning, or whatever works in your routine, to just incorporate certainly less than 5 minutes of this activity.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like for me, and this is from the pain-free performance specialist certification that I've taken that course a couple of times, and I really enjoy it. And for me, 10 to 12 minutes of warm up before workout is plentifully sufficient to prime what I want to prime. Yeah. That's how I feel based on the education that I've received from those PTs and so on that I respect. Yep. And so that's how I feel in the gym, and that's about the length of time that I take for myself and for my clients. But like mobility at home, just a handful of minutes can go so far. I guess the point of that is it just is like, it's not a huge commitment after all.
It doesn't need to be.
It's such a like almost like a micro dose your postural change, you know?
Right.
Anyway, okay.
Absolutely. And just trying to move a little, just change your position more frequently throughout the day. We don't want to be in one prolonged posture for a long time. Yeah. Simple as that.
Yep. Easy enough. Okay. Do you have anything else that we did not touch on that you would like to touch on?
I don't think so.
We covered some stuff.
We covered a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we did.
If you think of more stuff, I can come back again. But I think
what's great is I had later questions about how you weave faith into your practice, because it is something that you do. Yeah. And it occurs very organically, but I think that you pretty well already explained that in just your heart posture beginning of your day. Yeah.
And I will do the point I'll make on that is we obviously at ONNIT have a lot of, it's a very spiritual place. Yeah. Maybe not in the way of like Christianity or so to speak. Sure. But there are a lot of Christians there. Yeah. And I think at the one thing I always try to make sure of is I'm respecting other people's faith or other people's spirituality, whatever they believe, because I will never try to tell people that I know more than them, or I'm smarter than them, or that they should believe what I believe. And I don't believe that that's what Jesus did either. But if I can just try my best to be an example of the things that I believe in, I mean, if my goal is to bring more people to Jesus, then that is probably the best strategy to do it, is just by the way that I act, in the way that I care, in the way that I love people, not by trying to force theology or certain ideologies down their throats. That's never brought anyone to Christ.
Right.
And unfortunately, I feel like there's a lot of people who feel like that's what they should be doing, is they just need to be like shoving it in as many people's faces as possible, what they believe. And I would like to think their heart's in the right place.
Yeah.
They're just trying to do what they think that they're supposed to do. And again, I don't think that I necessarily know more than them, but I feel like the calling is to just be an example.
Yeah.
And love others.
I think that also creates more peace for you.
Yeah.
You know, like I think what you're maybe speaking to there is like evangelism or something, you know, that would be like the term that I would have heard growing up in regards to going and sharing your message. Right.
Yes. Yeah.
And thankfully, yet again, this is my whole life, is me just regurgitating things that I've heard. So this is just what I've taken and applied to that, is just like the attraction rather than promotion that I was taught elsewhere, of just like live a life that's attractive and allow that, you know, so whether that's your nutrition or your movement or your faith or whatever, just living a life that is attractive enough that maybe someone gets curious, and then at that point that you have the opportunity to share it, you know? And so that's yet again, like, is that what's for everybody? But when I think about the times in the past, especially when it comes to, nutrition, that would be an area where, like with my family, they would have some things to say about the way I used to approach that, you know? Well, I know what's best and you need to change.
Right.
And that never went well.
Right.
So now I just shut up. And now, cool story, my mom saw me coaching clean and jerk, and she said, I want to learn how to do that.
That's cool.
You know, what's really cool is about a decade ago when I started playing with a barbell, my mom said, please stop doing that. That looks like that could hurt you. And
I've heard that so
I don't
many
want you to get too bulky.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Literally.
Mom's gonna get canceled.
She's so good. Yeah, she's great about letting, but it was like so cool because watching her journey of spectating, she's watched now for years me prioritize the heck out of protein, train really heavy and hard, whatever. And she still sees me and I still just look like this, you know? Yeah. And so by now she's like prioritizing protein. And now she wants to play with a barbell. Yeah. Huh. And that
cool.
wasn't by going, Mom, you need to clean and jerk, you know? Like she just got curious.
Right.
So cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, okay. All right. We always end the episode with 3 things that you are grateful for today.
Oh my gosh. My wife, my son, and the community that I have at ONNIT. And I mean, and through the CrossFit gyms. I'm thinking, obviously, through where I get to work, I feel very blessed that I get to go and work there every day. Yeah. So I'm very thankful for that. But the whole community that we have in Austin, at ONNIT, at Karu, you know, through the weightlifting gyms, I love it here. I feel very blessed that me and Taylor get to start our family here around, because we don't have family here, not blood family, but we've created and developed a lot of relationships here that feel like family. So I'm very thankful for that.
I love it. I love it. That was so free flowing. Okay. My 3 gratitudes today are going to be, I'm grateful because you're here. This is Jimmy jokes with me about the fact that I'm grateful for the other person.
Do you say that every time?
No, not all the time.
Okay.
I truly don't say it all the time, but here's what I am going to do is I'm going to say, I'm grateful for Taylor.
Oh, that's nice.
Not you.
Yeah. Well, you already said you were grateful for me.
Okay, great. Well, I'm grateful for your wife because she has been, you know, in my life for a little over 2 years now and has just been such a supportive friend through the seasons that she's already seen me through in this period of time. And I got to spend a little bit, and we don't get to see each other very often right now. Y'all just had a baby, but got to spend some time together last week, and it still is just like, feels very comfortable, very supportive, very, you know, I really appreciate her friendship. Yeah. So I'm grateful for Tay. I am grateful for, a resilient body. I'm literally days out. It's Wednesday. And, anyway, I'm just grateful that this thing somehow is willing to tolerate some silly stuff. And the third and final things. Is I'm actually grateful for friends with faith. So I guess this one is going to be you. Dang it. Whatever. Anyway, but just that like I can talk to about it, you know, as I continue to get curious about my own journey and just like for you to share your perspective. I appreciate you being willing to share your perspective on that front. So, okay.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Where can people find you?
Well, you can find me working at ONNIT Gym in the very back corner of the gym.
You would never know.
It's so funny that I like literally walk all the way, like through the entire gym to the furthest point away from the front door,
literally
where my office is.
Yep.
Which is kind of fun. I get to walk past everyone 10 times a day, and I get to see everyone, and all of my patients, especially the ones that don't go to the gym, are like, oh my gosh, like, what is this place? Is that a gorilla head over there? Like, what is that?
Oh my gosh, are they so freaked out too? Because when I have new people come in, they're like, what is this?
What is this place? Yeah, a lot of them think it's really cool, and it's so unique too. So it's fun to have them kind of look all around and stuff.
Yeah.
If they're like really old and like more conservative or something, sometimes I'm like, I do not know what they're gonna think of this place, but anyways, you can find me in the back corner of ONNIT Gym. In terms of where I work, and then on social media, Layne Palm DC is my Instagram handle, and that's about it. I'm not too active on socials, so that's about all I got.
But you do respond when people inquire.
Yes, I do get a lot of patients that message me through Instagram for sure.
Although in Instagram, there's a link in your bio, which is where they should inquire.
Well, you can find my scheduler through there.
Right.
But yeah, oh geez, Taylor's gonna be mad at me. She's trying to help me especially the busier I get now. Yeah. Like try to keep everything kind of like compartmentalize work and personal and all that stuff. But one thing I do pride myself on is trying to be very accessible and personal, and it's part of that caring for people and wanting to know them to know I care. So you can message me if you like want to talk to me or have a question or schedule, and I can help. But yes, my wife would say, go through the link in my bio.
Yes. Yes. So I'm going to side with Tay because I have gotten, you know, I'm just going to side with Tay. So go to his link in his bio and schedule with him there. And trust me, he will get sufficient information leading up to the event to where you'll be good to go. You will get help. It'll be great. Okay. All right. All that'll be in the description. So if you go in the description or the show notes, wherever you're listening to this, all of his information will be there. The information for my coaching will also be there. So if you are someone who would like a resource, somebody to collaborate with you, hold you accountable, support you, and give you hopefully some access to some tools that have been helpful to me and my clients, then you can find access to that there. I will say we just changed the offering. So for my online, I now have economy, business, and first class. Bummer. Yeah. So anyway, there's basically group and one-to-one offerings based on because we just found, especially with that middle ground, that there was a good number of people with interest in a little bit less hand-holding, but more hand-holding than the group offering. Sure. So anyway, you can go to my site. It'll be in the description. You can learn more about that. I happen to be like fanatical about it. I think it's like the coolest thing ever to get to do. So that's
You're good at it.
I like doing it. We just hope that you choose to have a beautiful day.